Hello, Henrico learners. This is Ms. Boadar, the Educational Specialist for Elementary Math. Today, we are going to be talking about simplifying fractions. In order to talk about simplifying fractions, let's first talk about how we know if a fraction is in its simplest form. Here are some fractions. 1/8, 2/3, 3/5, 2/10. Several of these fractions are in their simplest form. Knowing if a fraction is in its simplest form is a matter of thinking about equivalent fractions and looking for an equivalent fraction where both the numerator and the denominator use the smallest numbers possible. For our example 1/8, our numerator is 1. Anytime we have a 1 in our numerator or a unit fraction, our fraction is going to be in its simplest form. 1/8 is a simplified fraction. In our example 2/3, our numerator and our denominator are only one number apart. When our numerator and denominator are only one number apart, our fraction is in its simplest form. For our fraction 3/5, we do not have a unit fraction, and we do not have a numerator and a denominator that are just one number apart. So we need to think if there is any way we can make an equivalent fraction using smaller numbers in the numerator and the denominator. In order to do this, I need to think if I can divide 3 and 5 by the same number. Because 3 and 5 are not divisible by the same number, 3/5 is already in its simplest form. For 2/10, we don't have a unit fraction. We don't have a fraction where the numerator is only 1 away from the denominator. And I notice that both the 2 and the 10 are even numbers that are divisible by 2. So to simplify this fraction and find an equivalent fraction using a smaller numerator and denominator, I could divide both the 2 and the 10 by 2. I know that 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So the fraction 2/10 written in simplest form would be 1/5. There are several ways that we can think about simplifying fractions. We could first look to see if the numbers are even and are divisible by 2, and repeatedly divide by 2. I know that 4 and 12 are both even numbers, so I could simplify 4/12 by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So 2/6 is a fraction that is equivalent to 4/12. However, I notice that 2 and 6 are again both even numbers. I may be able to simplify this further. Let's divide by 2 again. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Now I have a fraction that is 1/3. 4/12 simplifies to 2/6, but its simplest form is 1/3. We have a unit fraction, and I know that when 1 is in the numerator of a unit fraction, I cannot divide any farther. We can also think about factors when we simplify fractions. We've already talked about how 4 and 12 are both even numbers, so they have a factor of 2, but they have other factors in common. Let's list all of the factors for each number. For 4, I know I can multiply 1 times 4. I also know I can multiply 2 times 2. For 12, I can multiply 1 times 12, so they are factors of 12. I could also multiply 2 times 6 and 3 times 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12 are all factors of 12. If I want to simplify fractions in the fastest way possible, I look for their greatest common factor. I can see that 4 is a factor of 12, and 4 is also a factor of 4. As we discussed before, they already have the common factor of 2, and every number would have a common factor of 1. We're looking for our greatest common factor, and 4 is our largest number, so we'll use that to simplify our fractions. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So I could simplify my fraction 4/12 by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 4 to find that our fraction in simplest form is 1/3.